Mill stream restoration. This has been a project for a few years now, kind of in the limbo, trying to get started. The third project manager on it, so we're just trying to kind of this presentation will be kind of a hybrid of the initial and kind of the 35%, just to give people background and to catch up. That was my intent. So the agenda, it's kind of sort of agenda, objectives, project background, goals, existing conditions, proposed design, example, completed projects, and next steps. Please feel free to answer any questions during this agenda. We could go back and forth. It's not really strict. So I guess again, the point of this project, the meeting objective, is to introduce and discuss the 35% phase. Again, this is kind of this project's been taking some time because of all the employee turnover and the challenges with the different projects involved, and also the kind of the arc site across the stream. So it's kind of been delayed, and we have trying to push it forward. And then a little background on this project, basically why we're here. All our streams within Fairfax County have been surveyed based on requirements from the TMDL Chesapeake Bay watershed, and basically requires us to assess the condition of our streams. And we have identified Dew Creek as an impaired water body, and we're in the process of sort of getting up to date and trying to restore that. And then once we identify a stream as impaired, we will go out with all our team of ecologists and folks to visit the site and make sure it fits our criteria. So it's not just one way. We have many different ways of assessing the streams and make sure it's worth the time and effort to address it.
What does it mean when you say it's impaired, Matthew?
Impaired is it's a technical definition through the watershed plan by the EPA. So I can't really go into the specifics. So basically it's defined as there's enough erosion loss and pollutants that needs to be done something. And I could probably give you a better definition later on. But basically it's sort of a how it's been defined as impaired, which now triggers us to address it.
I'll just jump in real quick. So yeah, so the streams are generally qualified as being either excellent, good, fair, or poor. There's actually a couple criteria. One could be very poor. But for streams that are in the fair to poor / very poor condition, those are the ones where we often target restoration work. We try to improve the condition to both stop the erosion, as Matthew was saying, to meet some of our permit requirements, but also address the biology of the stream, the fish, and also the macroinvertebrates, the small organisms that live in the stream.
And then kind of go over, these are sort of overall project goals for all our restoration. Stabilize and restore the stream corridor, reduce sediment transport, protect existing, install new infrastructure, improve stream ecology, and promote diverse, healthy ecosystem, and control non-native invasive plants, enhancing riparian buffer with native plants. And that's pretty much our just general guidelines for everything to try for our stream restoration. These are kind of existing conditions that are currently on, or at least last time these photos were taken on Old Mill. You can see all the erosion. The picture on the left is kind of off of Old Mill. It's where you see riprap along the side of the road there, where it's eroding away, and we're in discussion of how to kind of address that. But that's one of our project goals, to protect existing utilities and resources, and that's kind of one of our complications for this job. Then if you look off on the right side, the mass erosion on the stream bank, it kind of speaks for itself. This is private property behind here, and they've lost a lot, and they're continuing to lose quite a bit with every storm. Here another existing photo, the one on the left here. This is the picture of the berm in question. It's not really well defined here, but basically this is the berm, and where you see this trees like falling into the stream is basically the edge of the berm where it's kind of being eroded away and washed away, and that's kind of the area that's going to be most impacted to the arc. The earthwork feature on that property is this area right here, and we're trying to find a way to stabilize it without disturbing it or too much and interfering with the history of it as well too. So it's pretty, even though it doesn't look like much, it's pretty complicated step for us. And then just more erosion, just your typical erosion that you'll see on the streams. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, the different layers of sediment. On the photo on the right, just a typical tree that's been undermined. We'll have other examples of that. As the stream comes in, it cuts out the trees or digs out the roots and undermines the trees, and they typically fall over. More examples, existing conditions along, this project. Again, this is that same photo. You see this tree right here. It's basically hanging on by its roots. It's been undermined. This doesn't have long to go. It's going to fall over. It has no structure, and it's kind of one of the things that we kind of need to address. And then just the other photos, just more erosion, kind of typical erosion during flows. And the far right photo is example of another undermined tree that's kind of fighting to stay up there. You can see all the roots on the shore. It's trying to stay there, but it's structurally not sound now, and it eventually will topple over. And one of our goals on these projects is to prevent the next tree from toppling over. If it keeps eroding away, then the next tree gets undermined and topples over. And that's kind of one of our objectives, to stabilize that and prevent it from happening. So this is our proposed design for this project. And we call it proposed because it's subject to change. We're in this sort of 35% phase where we kind of have the general idea of the footprint, but the specifics and how we kind of deal with the interacting with the different members of the residents that we need permissions from and the different partners. So it's basically, this is the layout, but it will be modified to fit the different needs for this project, and which we will go over in the next phase of this project. We use natural channel design, which is basically an accepted way of stream restoration, and that it's been studied for years, and we kind of model our restoration on that and use the natural design process as our specs and our details for that. One of our goals for this project is channel realignment, so we can bring if you notice, it's kind of hard to see in our my display here, but that we've pushed the stream further away to kind of protect the high quality eroding banks that we saw on that last picture, and just try to stabilize it the best we can. And then also this design will do a lot of grading from the stream. The old stream channel will have lots of habitat and in-stream structures to provide habitat features and accents for that. Also within the stream, we add either structural or structural features or habitat features depending on the need for the particular area.
Matthew, before you leave that image, can you go back real
Yep.
quick?
Yes.
So just for folks, on the left side of the image, you've got Richmond Highway, which we're coordinating closely with VDOT for the highway widening project, and they're also going to open up what's now a culvert under the road with a stream to about a 300-foot open span. Our project picks up there at 8801 next to ENF landscaping, or EMP landscaping, I'm sorry. And you can up there, we're gonna try to change kind of what they call the plan form of the stream, because we have more room to work. But as we approach Cedar Court, we're just going to stay in the existing alignments. As we go past the private parcels down there at the end of Cedar Court and down towards Old Mill, we're pretty much going to keep it in the existing channel. So the main portion there is to make that channel stable. So for the folks, everybody on the call here who's on the downstream end, we're not proposing to change the alignment at all.
Right. And
could I ask
yes, go ahead.
Can I ask a couple questions? So does that waviness that on the upstream portion, is that intended to help reduce velocity of the current as well? And are you attempting to change the drop in the stream over that distance, or?
Well, the drop in the overall stream will probably not be changed too much. We'll be grading and uplifting, and the point of the meandering or that twisting is try to connect the floodplain, and I believe it will reduce velocity as well too. So that the intent is to kind of connect the floodplain to the streams to allow better habitat and more water quality, and can absorb some of the water as well.
And Jim, I think
okay.
before, just real quick, Jim, you hit a really important point there. So There are a number of unbuilt parcels up there that really can't be built. They're floodplain. There's a lot of flooding. The county purchased 2 parcels on Cedar Court years ago and tore the houses down because they were flooding. So we really understand that we can't change the elevation here. We have to make sure one of the first goals is to protect the current properties and not worsen any condition, but provide a more stable stream channel. And you're correct, I think, as Matthew said, to provide a better stream plan form, so as it meanders up there, to be stable over time, but not in any way worse than flooding. Yeah, so I think you kind of nailed it. And as Matthew said, we really don't have much room to change the invert elevations of the stream because of the number of properties that are low lying, essentially.
Right. And I guess, sorry, one other question, and that is, I had not appreciated that as part of the widening project, they were going to increase the potential for flow that much under Route 1. Is that going to exacerbate the flooding when it does occur? Because, Dogue Creek already can run pretty high when it gets flooding. Is that going to sort of exacerbate that, do you think? Do you know?
Well, I think it has been determined that the VDOT project will cause an increase in flow, but that's kind of a VDOT project, and our project will be based on that and will not increase any kind of flooding or flow. I know, Charles, was that a good answer? I know this is a very touchy. I want to make sure I got that right.
No, I think that's good.
It sounds like a touchy answer.
I'm afraid to answer that question.
No, it's a good one. I think, Jim, what we found is that in conjunction with both the Richmond Highway project and when the discussions were going on about 8800 Richmond Highway, which is that property upstream, there was a lot of discussion about the flows. And what they determined with the Richmond Highway project was what had been used for the flows previously were too low, and the actual flows were much higher. So VDOT essentially corrected the model to determine what the flows were to adjust to the actual flows, which have been accepted by the county. But you bring up a really good point. How much does the opening of the road affect downstream flow? And I think the answer is that the road would overtop in the highest events in its current configuration. So in the largest flood events, I don't think it changes the flows very much. So in other words, the floodplain extent will not change. But there's more frequently recurring flows, they will arrive more quickly. So you'll remove that impediment, but in the current configuration, it just overtops at those biggest flows. So ultimately, it doesn't change the elevation per se, but does change the time of concentration.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And that is, again, one of the challenges that we're trying to figure out why it's kind of taking a little bit longer, is that, and we're based on what VDOT's going to do in the future. So that's part of one of the challenges that we're working on, and with VDOT and their engineers as well too. So our design teams coordinate with VDOT on basically every step of the way. This is kind of an example of a proposed design construction entrance that we talked about. I guess I haven't talked about it yet, but so this will be our most visible part of these projects. Usually from the road, you'll see big staging areas, construction site, and that's where it will really look like a construction site. Then we have kind of our proposed, again, we need permission. This is why it's all proposed. We're trying to access through this EP Landscaping in their area, which they've tentatively agreed to, and use that as their entrance to our staging area to access the construction site, because that's one of our biggest issues, is trying to figure out how to access the stream, get to the stream, save the trees, protect, do what we can. It's a very it's a lot to it, and we have basically private landowners allowing us to use their property to access it. Kind of really benefits everyone in this process. So this one is the construction and proposed off of Richmond Highway. It's kind of what we're hoping to do here. The second one is off of Dogue Drive in the paper subdivision, and off of the 2 county lots that are here. We're basically going to be using this as access as well. And these kind of are all our kind of confirmed access, or at least potentially confirmed access points at this time. Again, we bring these up because they are really the most visible ones, and it looks like a construction site. So that's kind of why we like to bring attention to that, and also know that they're subject to same kind of regulations as every other construction site. So this is kind of a going into the typical restoration practice. I can go into more specific for this project, but this is just general speaking of, this is a rendering of what we do, just try to get everything in there so it's a good visual. We try to add wood and log structures whenever we can to increase habitat. We have a structures called a root wad, log vein root wad combo, tow log, stream bank log rollers, floodplain wood assemblage, and I found that each engineers typically have their different names for these things. So we'll see pictures and go through that, which they are, because they don't really describe themselves in their names. We also have we try to use rock as limited as we can, but we have to have structural rock when necessary. The stream channel will have cobble rock in it. Also, some of the structures may have rock in it to kind of add the stability that we need for this project. So here's an example. We're talking about a root wad in one of our structures. Basically, it's just trying to add wood to a stream for wildlife habitat. Here is a log vein root wad combo. You see the log here and the root wad, and just sort of what we're trying to accomplish here. This is boulder rock jam. It's one of the things that we will construct if need be. I'm not sure this project will be needing that much rock, but it's all to be determined. Here's a brush run. It's basically just a woody debris put in the stream for habitat. And next one is stream log rollers. Again, this is structural and for habitat. And this is also, we like to add wood to the outside of our streams and our floodplains to add habitat and kind of keep the carbon in the area. And then kind of go design consideration, tree removal, which is our biggest kind of hot topic for everything. We will survey the whole site for trees greater than 12 inches, and then we'll have it mapped and put it on our plan for design, and then we'll have a number of folks review it throughout the process. We have arborists, urban forestry comes out the route to make sure. Basically, the whole process is to limit the amount of trees that are being removed, and that's why we continue that all the way to the final design, as we will try to keep as many trees as possible. And then I'll have I didn't put example of our tree protection plan, but we have put a lot of energy and money into it, and it's pretty confusing at this point, so I didn't want to bring it up, but I'd be happy to show example once this presentation is over. But basically, we do everything we can to protect tree roots, as in adding mulch, deck matting, planking around trees. We take it very seriously, and it's one of our biggest concerns moving forward. And here are some examples of just pretty pictures that look good. These obviously will take a while to get this pretty, but these are some examples that we want to all plant native trees and shrubs and grasses and other herbaceous layer in this restoration for our planting plan. So we kind of take an assessment of all the neighboring trees and plants in the area, and that's kind of based on our palette for what we are planning to put in this for the stream restoration. So now we're getting to, I guess this is my favorite part, is the before and after. This is some existing ones that happened in Fairfax County. You can see before and after. This one's very dramatic with the arrows to the townhouses and just the stream and the falling trees that are over. This is a very dramatic and good example. And this is sort of what we did on this project. This would be it's a bit of a tighter area than what is on Dogue Creek, but this is a good example. What we try to do is plant and stabilize. And you can see all the rock, or what we call the bed mix or cobble on the side. It's part of our stream stabilization that we put in the stream. Here's just the 2 years after construction. You can see same area. It's definitely a lot of growth over. I'll go back. You see before, immediately following, and then 2 years after, and you can see where all the trees are coming in. And it's a pretty dramatic change once it starts to grow in. Again, here's some more examples of a completed before and after. This is kind of a smaller channel, narrow one that's somewhat difficult to get to, and you can see how we kind of squeezed it in here, added our cobble mix to stabilize, and then a planting on the side with our tree deer protection fencing along to protect some of our plantings. Sometimes we will add deer protection just to ensure that our trees will survive.
Matthew, could you go
Yes.
back just a couple of frames, please, before we get too far beyond it?
Yes.
One more back from that.
Yes.
Yeah, the frame on the right. What is the actual stream bed? What does it consist of?
It's more like you see the stuff on the right here. It's basically that looks a little chunky on the right, but it's basically this material. It's a sizing up mix of different types from like 9-inch rock to smaller rock. It's a engineered design to kind of stabilize and provide some sediment to and some topsoil for growing. So it's not just like a riprap. It's a mix that's packable and designed specifically for the amount of flow and water that will come through here. And they base the particle size or the rock size on the amount of flow, so it will not move during heavy flows or
But
very much during heavy flows.
the fact that it looks rather smooth is simply that there's a significant amount of water flowing through there now, so you can't really see the surface of the bed.
Yeah, it typipally looks really smooth, definitely after the fact, because they're all the construction equipment is packing it down. But it gets roughed up through the once the planting and different storm events too. So I'll try to find. You see, this is kind of a little. It's not the best example, but it's yeah, it's not the best, but that's basically what it's going to look like after everything grows in. And the idea is that everything grows in and covers it up, so it's stable with the green, and you don't necessarily see all the rock. Oh, here's a good example of the. This is a little chunkier than we have at Dogue Creek. These are bigger than what's needed there, but this material here is kind of basically what you're going to see in the stream bed. Is kind of pretty good representation. This is a bit chunkier, and I think it's not necessary for what's needed at Dogue Creek.
Hey,
The
Matthew,
rock that we see here is native, not necessarily to Dogue Creek, but in the general vicinity of Northern Virginia.
Yeah, we get this from our local quarries. It's spec'd out for this. We do salvage materials whenever we can. Sometimes we'll top dress our engineer mix with the local material, but yeah, most of that will be imported unless we're able to use what we can, depending on what's available. But yeah, most of it's imported from a local quarry.
But what looks like rocks are really rocks. They're not what you just referred to as an engineered mix or anything. Or is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that's basically big rocks and little rocks and medium-sized rocks all put together, and that's what I mean by the engineer mix. And I'm just claiming this is kind of not a very good representation because it is kind of chunky, and it's more for protection that you will see. But basically, it's an engineered mix that is big, small, medium-sized rocks put together, basically.
You mentioned, I think you used the term Kabul. What is that?
Cobble is just a stream cobble. It's one of the words we use. We have so many definitions of
That's
everything.
different
So
from cobble, right?
no, cobble like rock cobble, like yeah, just rock.
Street.
Yeah.
But
What was that?
all of us have in our background somewhere the cobblestone, COBBLE. That's not what you're talking about, right?
No, it's more like how we refer to it. We call it a bed mix as well too, or it's just we have different names for. Yeah, no, it's a mix specifically designed for the amount of water that's going to come down the stream.
But Sheila, I
So
will
that's
say
not
that,
a natural product. That's a
Oh no, it's all natural. It's all natural rock, and it's a natural product, but it's not directly from Doe Creek.
no, I would figure that. Yeah.
But Sheila, it is we do often use cobble just as you're describing. So it's rock that's relatively rounded. It has a diameter that's variable, and it's just that as Matthew said, the rock is sized based on the energy of the stream. So the higher the energy, the larger the average rock size, but there's a high variability within the mix. So just as he's describing, but you're correct. It is cobble as you've described it. The difference is on the rock that's gray in the former pictures, it is rock that's quarried, but it is local. So it's been fractured to make it a certain size, but it's mixed in with all those other rocks that are natural in their origin. And they were made that way over millions of years, but they've been quarried out.
Yeah, and then what we're trying to do is not make it look like a riprap bed. We know that's not acceptable, so that's kind of what I guess
Well, that
that's
was
what you're
kind of
putting.
my next question.
Yeah.
What, Jen, if you had to describe the color of the bankings that are created, or the borders that are created on either side of the stream by these rocks, what color would you say it is?
It's most likely going to be this kind of brown tans that you see, maybe a little blue mixed in, but just kind of that would depend on the spec for this project. But they're all typically like that. They're more brown than blue, basically.
Does the possibility exist for a darker mix, darker in color?
I'm not sure about that. I haven't had that question yet, but we can look into that. I don't know how you would be hard to get that, but we can talk about that later, I guess.
Okay.
I think I know. Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to get at, but yeah,
Hey,
we can
Matthew,
figure that out.
can you go back to one of the Oakford example? Couple more, two more. There. So Sheila, near your property, we would not try to lift the stream this much. So this stream is in the Braddock district, and it was very incised, and we had the opportunity to lift the bottom of the stream up to put it closer to what used to be the floodplain. But where you are, we do not want to do that, because your property, David's property, we don't want to put more water on those properties. So we would keep this stream lower overall, and then make it the banks more gradual. So it'd be a little less flat than what you're seeing in that photo. It'd be down a little bit closer to where it is now. And we would try to then make the banks very stable.
Thank you. Excuse me.
All right, so we'll go back to this is a good example, and just another one, another more dramatic example. You can see this landowner, or this about to lose his fence. And it's kind of typically what we do, just stabilize and lay it back. And the sloping, unless you see the sloping, is probably key for stabilization. Here's another example of a turn. This is where they put this rock in where it was necessary to protect this bank. And you can kind of see 2 years after growth, it's already kind of growing in. More before and after. This was that log, whatever that was called, the log cascading logs or whatever they guys called that one. It's a pretty dramatic difference too, and with the green coming in and the logs as well. Again, another existing stream channel and that rendering of the completed project. And this kind of might be more typical what you're going to see, Sheila, because it has banks on it, and like we said, we're not connecting too much, so that might be a little better representation. Also, much cleaner and neater next to your house. And then I guess next step, we are still in the 35 to 65% design. And like I said, we have all these challenges to kind of figure out. And then we are working with our design contractor to address those. And I'm kind of reaching out to all the folks involved to try to get this moving forward. And I think we're in a good track, and I think I'm trying to push it forward or bullet forward, however I can get it done, and we'll see what happens. So here's my contact information. If anyone needs any information, I'd be happy to meet you on site to talk about it, or if your property or the neighbor's property, just give me a call. We can meet and talk about this project. Let me try to exit out of here.
Matthew?
Yes.
Are you
Yeah, I'm
there?
here. No,
Okay.
I didn't jump out quickly.
What, if anything, has been learned about the project on the other side of Richmond Highway, just like directly across from the beginning of this project? then could it in any way impact this project? And
Well, it's definitely tied to this project, but more what's the downstream of it. So it's kind of somewhat independent, as that we've already using what's going to come downstream as a design for this project. So it doesn't really affect us too much, but we kind of have to coordinate with VDOT and to make sure that it all turns out the way we want it to. So I guess that's a good answer. But yeah, it's all intertwined, but also independent. So it's part of the complications for this project.
Sheila, are you referring to the place we talked about, not 8800, but the one on the opposite side of the creek that you were referring to before that's redeveloping?
yes, I had understood that it was going to be apartment housing.
I don't know about that.
If you looked at the bridge from our side, it would be the southern side. The northern piece is maybe was part mobile park. I'm not really sure of that, but
the one directly across. I don't know if
this is the one that's on the south side. So basically, it's currently a building, and they're redeveloping the parcel. And we haven't explored it intensively. I will say this though, that in redevelopment, they're going to have to reduce their flows. It's a relatively large site, so their requirement will be to detain more water on site and treat it. And that should be a net gain in terms of stormwater flows just from them, but they are pretty low in the shed, so their overall reduction will not significantly change anything. They won't worsen it, but they will not appreciably improve the stormwater flows.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's at 8850 Richmond Highway that you're talking about, that one development, or that where the signs are.
I understood they had a public meeting about it maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I wasn't able to go. And I thought it was pretty far along. It was 200 and some odd apartments in 3-story buildings, I believe. So there'll be parking lots and so on, again, that would impact us, I assume. But there's also supposed to be a recreation area that I think, are planning to put toward the brook. So that could help, I assume. So, but I don't know how far along that is, or whether it was approved or not.
And I'll kind of look into that. Jotted down a note to look into that address to see where they're at. But typically they have to do all these. They do a parking lot, they're gonna have to do stormwater ponds and pretty extensive review of what they do. So I'll try to find some information for you on that.
Nick may have more information. Nick?
Yeah, I wanted to just add to that. This is Nick Reinhardt. I work for Supervisor Stork, by the way. I'm his land use and development liaison. That building you're referring to is now undergoing a review for a potential plan amendment, an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So that would just be amending what, the language in our long-range planning documents in Fairfax County about what could be developed at that site. It's still very early in the process, so I don't see any redevelopment happening potentially for another, like, at least 3 to 5 years down the road. But yeah, definitely something to consider. So
thinking that building would be taken down and replaced, or
I mean, that's what this current nomination, that's part of our site-specific plan amendment process that's going on countywide is looking to do, but it's still very preliminary. It's, the next step for that would be to move it to a stage of further analysis and evaluation, and then after that is approved, there'd be an eventual zoning application to redevelop it should it get that far.
I think I have just one more question. I'm sorry. I always have so many. Sorry. Is the Mount Vernon Country Club involved in any way? I know they actually don't abut the stream, but it's only because of Old Mill Road that goes between it. And they do have streams that go into the Dogue Creek.
I have not engaged them because they're, like you said, they're kind of across Old Mill Way. They do have one little inlet that might impact right around that where it's very close to the stream, but I don't think it really impacts them as far as this project. It's more, yeah, it's not involved in this project.
Okay. And they, further down, the stream that goes through there, I don't know what that one is referred, branch something or other, with a bridge that just beyond David's house.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
also ultimately feeds back into
yeah, it does kind of, but
Creek. Yeah.
for this project, we kind of won't go down quite that far. And yeah, that's, I haven't even looked at that stream yet, so hopefully it's in good shape. But
Sheila, I'll say that I know that I've spoken with some consultants who worked with their property. Within the last probably 8 years, they had to do work to model the flows to their property because they were doing some work to demonstrate that their flows wouldn't worsen. So I'm not aware of any activity related to that property, but I do know they had to look at the flows to their property. And proportionately, since they are open space, they aren't contributing significantly. I don't think there's anything proposed for a change. Nick, do you know if there's anything proposed for that Mount Vernon Country Club?
Not that I'm aware
of. So Matthew, you're the project manager, and Charles, if you don't mind my asking, what's your role?
I work with Matthew. I'm the branch chief who oversees the projects that are occurring in Mount Vernon District and a couple other districts.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll just say that we fully appreciate that you are our clients. So we're here to talk with you and understand what your concerns and questions and to get your feedback. And we're responsible to you and to Nick and Supervisor Stork to make sure we act, we're proactive in addressing those concerns.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I probably do have a couple more questions, not for this meeting, but more on the VDOT project and its potential impact. And I understand that's outside the scope of what you're working on here, but so yeah, maybe I could reach out separately just to be able to ask those questions.
Yeah, Jim,
that's fine.
If you'd like to reach out to me, I'm happy to. I don't know if you're able to access the chat for this meeting, but I can put my email in for you to ask me any questions about that Richmond Highway project.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess, do we have any more questions, comments? Nick, you got anything?
No, just thanks, Matt and Charles and Susie and the team for holding this meeting and hoping the rest of the design process goes swimmingly.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, this project, this is a critical phase, is talking to you all, and we can't proceed without land rights. So we have easements on the floodplain properties that run along the hotel, and Jim, down along your community, you've dedicated easements when you dedicate land to the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. But we need easements from the other side of the creek. So EP Landscaping and 3 different property owners downstream of them down to Old Mill. If we absolutely need to address any concerns by those property owners. And some of them have significant concerns about erosion, but also about potential impacts from our project. So that's the phase we're in now, is to address their concerns, see if we can arrive at a design solution that addresses those, both from protecting their property, but also not negatively impacting it, and get those rights in place. And then also, as Matthew indicated, working with the Mount Vernon Ladies Association to make sure we're addressing the cultural resource issues on their side of the creek. So once we get that addressed, and then downstream of you, David's got very specific concerns about erosion, and we hope strongly we can address those too as part of this project.
Yep. And then this is a community project, not just stream restoration, not just anything else. It's a community base, and we all need everyone on board and everyone's support, and this is why it's all proposed at this point, and it's a work in progress to get to that final design. That's why we have all these meetings and include everyone to get everyone's input to make this fit the community, not just for what we need, for what the community needs as well. And I guess with that, I will end this meeting, and thanks everyone for showing up, and please feel free to reach out for specific questions or email me, and I'll be glad to answer you, find out more information. But thank y'all, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.